can no longer keep throwing garbage into a landfill and forgetting about it. That day has long passed.
It is not a simple issue. Recycling cannot solve the waste management problem that we are facing today.
Recycling is definitely here to stay.
Unless you're buying products that are made from recycled items, you're not truly recycling.
On any given day, you, me, and every Albertan throws out about a kilogram of household waste every day. That's 400 kilograms a year from each of more than 2.4 million people. That's a lot of garbage. But it's only about 1/3 of the total garbage in this province. Another third comes from the commercial sector. Stores, hospitals, offices, restaurants, fast food outlets. A quarter of these mountains is inert, things like wood, concrete, rubble from construction sites. And finally, perhaps a little surprisingly, less than 10% from industry. When you put it all together, Alberta's very own Mount Garbage grows by 2.3 million tons every year.
It would be a spectacular sight, except Mount Garbage is upside down, buried, out of sight, out of mind. At least that's what we used to think, before garbage became news. The headlines speak for themselves. A decade and more of discovering that garbage may be out of sight, but it's seldom truly out of mind. People reacted. Not in my backyard became a rallying cry for thousands opposed to new landfill sites. It was a powerful cry, blocking new landfills across the continent and sending landfill costs soaring. Millions of dollars to bury renewable and non-renewable resources that many feared would run out.
There's no longer any doubt that waste management presents serious problems. And of all the ways we can tackle these problems, recycling has raised the greatest expectations. It seems such a simple, even magic solution. Instead of sending stuff to the dump, you send it back to the manufacturer. You save on natural resources. Recycling waste paper from the average household, for instance, would save about 1.5 trees a year. You save on landfill costs, and you reduce pollution. You also create jobs. In Alberta's case, over 5,000 jobs in an industry that's worth more than $400 million a year. Now, that's impressive. But Alberta still recycles less than 1/5 of all its waste. The rest goes back into the dump. And that demonstrates a very hard reality, that recycling is not a magic solution to waste management problems.
Hannah, the conservation capital of Canada. It's a kind of local boosterism many don't take seriously. But in this case, there's reason for local pride. The Hannah Lions Club has been running recycling programs for over 12 years, collecting paper, cardboard, glass, and used engine oil. 1 year alone, these programs raised $50,000 for community projects. But today, this tanker sits full of used oil that's virtually worthless.
Well, when we started collecting waste engine oils, our price at the storage tank here was 54 cents per gallon. Excellent market. Excellent return. It's gone from 54 cents a gallon net to $800 per tanker load of oil out of our storage tank to the re-refinery. We've had to call a halt to it. We can't subsidize it any longer. Anything that has been made has been spent back, and we've reached the bottom line.
It's an uncertain period for the Hannah Lions. Not only have used oil prices dropped, the Medicine Hat factory that purchased and recycled their glass has shut down. And to cap it off, the price paid the Lions for used paper has dropped lower than the cost of transporting it to a recycler. What these problems illustrate is that recycling needs more than good intentions and great expectations to succeed. Market realities drive recycling industries, the same as any economic activity. Picture our economy as a great highway. It's an efficient highway leading straight from natural resources like water, wood, and minerals to thousands of factories and industries where these resources become the millions of products that surround us on store shelves. We are a consumer society. Many millions of Canadians and no small number of Albertans have ridden this highway to a lifestyle far beyond anything our ancestors dared hope for. Unfortunately, the highway has a dead end. The landfill. The consumer society is also the throwaway society. And this one-way trip makes Canadians the biggest producers of garbage per person on Earth. Turning this one-way trip into a round trip is what recycling is all about. In waste management, it's called closing the loop. But to succeed, the entire cycle has to function. Materials collected for recycling have to be processed, then manufactured into new products. Then, those recycled products have to be purchased, used, and returned to the cycle.
All of those steps have to exist, otherwise you don't recycle. And if whether it's a scrapyard like our own business is, or whether it's a paper recycling project like the town of Hannah runs, if any of those components disappear, the recycling project stops, and that's what we're seeing now. A lot of the people that were recycling paper have stopped recycling paper because the market has disappeared, or because it costs more money to transport the goods to the market than the material is worth.
Rick Dvorkin knows how difficult closing the loop can be. He's the president of the Recycling Council of Alberta, an information and support group for the province's recycling industry. He also runs a company near the top of Alberta's most successful recycling industry, metal. If the loop has been closed for any one material, this is it. The loop's been closed because metal recyclers have a distinct competitive edge. There's almost no mining or smelting of virgin metals in Alberta. It's a market gap that's been filled by scrapyards shipping metals to a technologically new generation of smelters. These can melt and reshape metal into new products using just a quarter of the energy needed to produce virgin metal. And the loop is completed by customers who know from years of experience that recycled metal does the job. The industry's so successful, it processes 2/3 of the total tonnage of all materials recycled in Alberta. That success is a primary reason you won't find very much metal in your local dump.
Apart from construction rubble, what you will find is almost entirely household and commercial waste. Paper and cardboard, grass clippings, kitchen refuse, glass, plastic, rubber. All common materials. But that doesn't mean that the success of metal recycling can be repeated with each. Indeed, recycling a lot of these materials presents particular challenges. And that's on top of all the challenges that are attached to building up a normal business, finding the money, the raw materials, developing the product, and the technology to make that product. And most fundamentally, developing markets for the final product.
You have to have markets for your material. It doesn't matter if it's tires or plastic or paper or steel. If you can't sell it, there's no sense collecting it. And that basically has to be kept at the forefront of whatever you're doing, no matter what the benefits are of the environmentally. If you're doing something that's environmentally sound, that's great. But if you can't make a dollar at it, if you can't make money at it, ultimately you're going to fail.
It's estimated that over 2 million used tires are discarded in Alberta every year. Glenn Cohen has thought these could be profitable mountains for several years, but he's taken it step by step.
Scrap tire recycling could have been done a long time ago, but it wouldn't have been successful. There's been technology out there that's been suspect, and that technology has been improved to the point where people are looking at it again.
But moving mountains is expensive. So step one is a portable tire grinder that can go to the mountain, anywhere in the province.
To ship a whole tire, you're shipping air mostly, but if you chip it down into this, it stacks onto each other very well, and then you get a good load when you're shipping it back in. From there, you end up with a material such as this, which is the steel and the fiber all mixed in together. It's rayon fiber.
Step two separates the rubber from the metals and synthetic fibers used in tires for added strength. First by grinding the material into smaller sizes, then using magnets and jets of air to separate the metal and rayon fibers. And this is the final product, rubber crumb of varying sizes that can be sold to other manufacturers. But step three in Cohen's long-term plan is a factory that can turn these pellets into consumer products, like rubber mats, floors for gymnasiums, even artificial turf. Like any business, it's a gamble. Success depends on one thing, customer acceptance of Cohen's products. That may be the most difficult step.
When you tell them you have a recycled material, they automatically think it's second grade or it's second grade material. You have to change that concept and show the people that the material that you're making is as good as anything else they can find on the market. So that's another perception that we have to change.
As you can see, we take in both newsprint and corrugated waste.
Customer acceptance is a bottom line for Edmonton's can-sell industries as well. The company is one of Alberta's oldest paper and cardboard recyclers. It's also one of the biggest, buying and recycling as much as 1,400 tons of newsprint a month.
This material, as you can see, is the Edmonton Journal and the Sun and such. It's newsprint. We use a good deal of it ourselves in the production of cellulose insulation. Or the surplus material is sold to other users. A good deal of it, in fact, goes offshore to Asia.
This is cellulose insulation. The product itself isn't new. Cellulose insulation has been used for more than 30 years. It's a good thermal insulator as well as an acoustic barrier. What is new is a system for spraying the insulation into the walls of new houses. If accepted by government authorities and the construction industry, the system could swell the company's profits. At the same time, it would boost the demand for recycled newsprint. But new products take time, sometimes years, to win regulatory approvals. So the company shows off its system when it can and deals with more immediate problems.
The main problem at the moment is the business of surplus. The issue of recycling has gained a lot of support through municipal government action of late, which is all good. But we've got a situation similar to a pipeline where you put stuff in at one end, and if it's not taken out the other end at the same rate, well, it plugs up, and that's sort of where we're at.
Just driving by, it's just out at the waste management station.
It's an analogy Don Richardson and the Hannah Lions would understand. Their trucks are caught in the backlog.
I was just out checking, your tank is overflowing. The tank truck is full. The barrels are stacking up out there, full of oil. We have to do something.
Hannah's town administrator, Alex Simpson, knows the story too well. The market for recycled oil has been squeezed between low prices for virgin oil and customers who don't trust it in their cars.
And so we thought, as a municipality, we should investigate the possibility of using recycled crankcase oil.
Definitely.
So council asked me to get in touch with...
The idea is a kind of swap with a refinery. The town would buy and use recycled oil in its vehicles. In return, the refinery would take the Lions' used oil. But both Dawn and Alec know it's only one step towards a long-term solution.
All they can.
No, but if the town of Hannah starts this, other municipalities will pick up on it, and if the provincial government would pick up on it and just use it in their vehicles alone, Alberta would not have a problem with waste engine oils or lubricating oils.
When you say government is a big user of products, indeed it is. I think in many cases for recycled materials, the government is seen as a bigger user than it actually is. For instance, the waste oil, we've just had a study commissioned on the recycling of oil, used oil.
As head of the recycling branch at Alberta Environment, Glenn Singleton was responsible for the province's waste management programs. He's heard the assertion that government use of recycled oil would solve the problem.
Well, when the numbers were actually collected, it was apparent that the government vehicles would account for probably less than 1 or 2% of the actual oil that could be consumed as recycled oil. Now, that's not to say as the government doesn't have a role, and a major role.
That government should support recycling is a point of broad agreement, but just try to define what that support should be. Consensus splinters into many often opposing points of view, even within the recycling industry itself. But even if these issues were resolved, even if every government used nothing but recycled materials, it would only reduce pressure on landfills and natural resources. Businesses and individuals must also use and buy recycled materials. Even then, the people who deal in waste management say the real solution to the problem is getting control of the amount of waste that we produce in the first place.
Industry learned this before many municipalities. It was forced to by high disposal costs and increasingly strict government regulations. So it learned what's called the 4 R's of waste management. Reduce waste. Don't make as much of it. Reuse materials for the same or another job. Then recycle what can't be reduced or reused. Finally, recover value or energy from what remains.
Alberta Waste Materials Exchange. Bill Kay here.
It hardly looks the part, but this tiny office is a crossroads for hundreds of industries using the 4 R's.
The motto in waste exchanges over North America is that one man's waste is another man's gold, and that's the basis under which we operate. We try to find...
Bill Kay runs the Alberta Waste Materials Exchange in Edmonton. His stock in trade is information supplied by industry. On a moment's notice, the exchange can list the availability of thousands of tons of waste industrial material, from paper and cardboard to metals, industrial chemicals, and plastics.
Well, one example was that we received a call from the city of Edmonton, who had a material, it's called morpholine, and it's used to clean boilers. And the only way
that was to sell, trade, or just give away, as it turned out. The call came to the exchange because it also lists companies that are looking to acquire waste materials for their own use. Bill Kay knew several companies who could use the morpholine.
And I suggested that if they talked to the city might give that material to them to avoid the disposal costs, and they would have material that they could use for treatment. And it worked out very well. One saved on disposal costs and the other saved on purchase cost.
In this case, the giver saved most. Disposal of the material at Alberta's special waste treatment plant would have been expensive but mandatory. In Alberta, this is the end of the line for refuse that might threaten human or environmental health. It can't be landfilled, and it often can't be recycled. Swan Hills is the only facility in Canada that can safely destroy toxic materials like PCBs. The plant can handle as much as 15,000 tons of hazardous waste a year. Most of that comes from industry through a stringently controlled collection and transportation system. It's a system built on identifying, then tracking every shipment of hazardous waste in the province, from its point of origin all the way to Swan Hills. The system works well for waste from large industries, as these are relatively easy to identify and control.
But in fact, if you take households as a collective unit, households are the single largest generator of hazardous wastes in North America. And I don't think people ever would dream that in 1,000 years. But when you think about all the chemicals that we use in our house, in our gardens, and cleaning agents in our houses, and paint and thinners and glues, and most of those are hazardous wastes. They're poisonous to people.
Not everyone agrees with Rick Dvorkin's figures, but they do agree that keeping this kind of material out of landfills is important. And that's the purpose behind community programs like Toxic Roundup. This provides a way for ordinary Albertans to be part of waste management. You take your hazardous waste to a community depot. In turn, these feed into regional waste transfer stations for shipment to Swan Hills and a safe disposal. It's a dead end by design. The entire hazardous waste system is like a highway, separate from normal waste. It's what Alberta Environment calls the first level or tier of waste management. On the other hand, closing the loop applies mostly to the second tier, the one for non-hazardous materials. And that's where community collection programs fit in, as just one of the 4 R's.
Recycling has become a major component of our waste management plan. And I think
Bonnie Kulak says it was Edmonton's frustrating 8-year search for a new landfill that drove home the need for a comprehensive waste management plan.
But one of the good things that has come out of it is the fact that public awareness levels about garbage has increased tremendously in this city. People they realize now that we can no longer keep throwing garbage into a landfill and forgetting about it. That day has long passed.
Edmonton uses its Blue Box recycling program to reduce garbage going to its landfill. It costs the city several $1 million a year. About half of that money comes here, to the Edmonton Recycling Society. It's the Blue Box collector for half the city. With low prices for recycled materials, it costs the society more to collect than it earns in sales. So the city pays the difference.
It's not us, it's not the city, it's not the people, it's everyone working together.
That's the attitude Jerry Wiebe credits with the society's early success. In fact, both collection groups are not only surviving, they're expanding the materials they collect.
Success is not something you plan. Success is the end result of a lot of people with a lot of commitment doing something that they're committed to. And I don't think that we've been successful yet, because I know that there are people out there that aren't recycling yet. And I know there are people out there that don't believe that recycling is a good thing.
But those numbers are surprisingly small. Participation rates in collection programs across Alberta are high, as much as 70%. The public supports collection. But, and it's something the Hannah Lions know too well, that's not enough. Frustrated by losing money, the Lions suspended all of their collection programs just a few months after our crew filmed there.
We feel that there's also a fifth R that isn't mentioned very often, the R standing for responsibility. And that R, I think, probably is the most important at this point in time.
Responsibility, not great expectations. That's what it's all about. Responsibility for waste management. Responsibility for closing recycling's loop. It's shared by everyone, individuals, business, governments. It means looking after hazardous wastes in the home, using toxic Roundup rather than garbage day to dispose of these materials. It also means using 3 of the 4 R's in the home. Reduce your waste, buy less, use less, throw less away. Reuse materials whenever you can, and recycle. Use the blue box and community collection programs. But without markets, recycling won't work. So for the home, for business, for government, responsibility includes buying goods that are made from recycled materials. Now, if you don't produce any garbage at all, then the fifth R doesn't apply. But you do. We all do. We're all riding that highway. Responsibility is inescapable.